The storm outside the glass walls had been growing that raged. Every few seconds, a flash of lightning sliced across the skyline, throwing the faces of the 5 women into sharp relief, strong, exhausted, unyielding. They sat in a line, perfectly still, their reflections trembling against the polished floor. Marcus Vale stood at the far end of the room, framed by the vast window that overlooked the city. He looked less like the billionaire they had once followed and more like a man lost inside the ruins of his own empire. His hair was disheveled, his tie undone, and the shadows beneath his eyes looked deeper than the skyline itself. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. You all came. The oldest, Lena, sat in the middle of the row. She had been his operations chief once, sharp, fearless, the first to arrive every morning and the last to leave every night. Now, her hands were clasped in her lap, fingers stiff from years of holding too much in. We came, she said, because you asked. Marcus's eyes flickered. I didn't think you would. You didn't think we'd still have the courage, said Kara, the youngest of the group. She was only 23 when she joined his startup, fresh out of college and burning with belief. She had idolized him once. Everyone did. A faint tremor crossed Marcus's face, barely visible, but real. I didn't call you here for a fight. Lena's gaze didn't waver. Then what did you call us for? To apologize, to justify what you did. Outside, thunder cracked, echoing through the room like the memory of his voice when he used to shout across the office floor. He could still see it, the open concept space, the rows of computers, the faces turning toward him when things went wrong. He told himself it was leadership, that pressure forged greatness. But in truth, it had been fear, pure and deliberate. He stepped closer to the women, the soles of his shoes clicking on marble. You deserved better, he said quietly. Lena almost laughed, but it came out brittle. Better. You hit us when we stopped making money. The words hung in the air, heavier than thunder. He didn't move, didn't deny it. His hand tightened around the edge of the table beside him, and for a moment, his voice was gone. It wasn't always like that. When the company had started, just 6 people in a cramped apartment, eating instant noodles, living on dreams, Marcus had been kind. Driven, demanding, but human. He listened then. He remembered birthdays. He promised that if they all gave everything, the future would be theirs. And for a while, it was. They built something brilliant, a platform that reshaped communication, drew millions of users, billions of dollars. Investors called Marcus a genius, magazines named him the architect of the new age. The others, the people who made his dreams real, faded into the background. Then came the crash. Markets turned, the numbers slipped, the press turned cold, and Marcus changed. He didn't yell at first. He froze them out. Meetings became interrogations. Praise turned into punishment. He began using his silence as a weapon, the kind that made people doubt their worth. And when silence stopped working, his words grew sharper, crueler, until no one spoke around him at all. Kara broke that silence now. Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't. You told us once that we were a family. But when the profits dropped, you treated us like failures. Like we'd betrayed you. Marcus turned toward her, but she looked through him, not at him. He remembered that day, the quarterly meeting when the losses were announced. He had slammed his hand against the table, shouting names, threats, accusations. He remembered the way she had looked at him then, her eyes full of disbelief. It had been the first time she'd seen him not as a mentor, but as a monster. The rain grew louder, a steady roar against the glass. Marcus moved to the window, resting one hand against the cold pane. Below, the city sprawled out in lights and motion, millions of lives untouched by his regret. I thought I was doing what had to be done, he said finally. Lena's voice cut through the storm. You thought breaking us would make us stronger. It didn't. It made us leave. He turned, his expression cracked open with guilt. And yet you came back. No, Lena said. We came to make sure you understood what you did. The others shifted slightly, glancing between them. Samira, who had once led the marketing team, crossed her arms, her gold bracelet catching the light. You built your empire on people who believed in you, she said. When it started to crumble, we tried to help. But you pushed everyone away. You didn't just hit us with words, you destroyed every bit of faith we had left. I know, Marcus said, his voice hoarse. Every day since you left, I've thought about that. The silence after you were gone was worse than any headline. I couldn't fill it, because silence doesn't care about money, Kara murmured. It only tells the truth. Marcus turned away from the city and faced them fully. For a moment, the mask slipped, the arrogance, the control, all of it gone. There was only the man underneath, raw and uncertain. "I didn't call you here to defend myself," he said. "I called you here because I want to make it right." Lena frowned. "How do you make something like that right?" "I've already started selling my shares," Marcus said. "What's left of the company, the patents, the infrastructure, the assets, they'll be transferred to you. All of you, together." The women looked at each other in disbelief. Kara blinked. "You're giving it away." "Yes," Marcus said quietly. "I built something monstrous. You built something human. If there's anything left worth saving, it belongs to you." Lena stood slowly. The others followed her lead, though none stepped closer. "You think that fixes it?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, but maybe it's the first thing I've done that isn't about control." Lightning flashed again, lighting up the whole room. For a moment, it looked as if the storm outside had moved in, every reflection in the glass fractured, multiplied, a mirror of what he'd done to them. Samira's eyes softened, though her voice didn't. "You can't undo years of fear, Marcus. We built this place with our hands, and you turned it into a weapon." "I know." Lena looked at him, studying his face. The man who had once terrified entire boardrooms now looked small, almost fragile. "What happened to you?" she asked quietly. "You used to care." He exhaled, the breath trembling out of him. "I cared too much about being seen as a success. I thought that if I stopped winning, I'd stop existing. And so you made us pay the price," Lena said. Marcus nodded slowly. "I did." The clock on the wall ticked, the only sound between them. Then, one by one, the women began to move. Kara picked up her coat from the chair, Samira gathered her bag, the others followed. None of them said goodbye. As they reached the door, Marcus spoke again. "Lena," he said softly. She paused, her hand on the handle, but didn't turn around. "Tell me something," he said. "After everything I've done, do you think I can ever be different?" She hesitated for a long moment. Then, without looking back, she said, "That depends on whether you keep listening when no one's watching." The door opened, the storm's wind rushing in for a moment before it closed again. Marcus stood alone. The city stretched below him, an ocean of light and distance. He could see the reflection of his face in the glass, pale, older than he remembered, hollow around the eyes. He had once loved that view, the symbol of everything he'd achieved. Now it felt like standing on the edge of something endless and empty. He walked slowly to the center of the room, his footsteps echoing in the silence they'd left behind. On the table lay a stack of papers, contracts, signatures, the final surrender of his empire. His hand trembled slightly as he touched them. The rain outside softened, fading into a steady hum. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of quiet not as judgment, but as consequence. It was the sound of everything he had refused to hear. He lowered himself into one of the chairs where the women had sat, running a hand over the smooth fabric. He could still feel their presence, the weight of their words. His chest ached, not from guilt alone, but from the realization that maybe, just maybe, redemption began where pride ended. The storm rolled further away, taking its thunder with it. The city lights glimmered on, untouched. Marcus looked up at them, his reflection merging with the night. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't thinking about power, profit, or control. He was thinking about listening, truly listening, and how, after all the noise he had made, silence was the only thing left that could teach him how.